Wanted to stop here. This is not part of the site directly, although many spiritual places are, if you're up on that little knob, you can look that way and you can look that way, are very special places. So I hope in the history of this college that no building I think 4 years ago, we had an event here that I'd like to talk about just because we're here. And that is, we had a number of students from region of rural Alaska where there was an epidemic of suicides. You've read about these. They happen from time to time. They're not unique to rural Alaska. They happen in urban Alaska as well. It's a little more effect on a small village than it is on Anchorage, Kenai. But we had a number of students from there, and as you might imagine, they were distressed because villages function to support their members, and they were far away. So Sandra Shaganoff Stewart and I put together a cloth ceremony that we held right here. Cloth ceremony is a traditional Dena'ina, Helen will say Dena'ina ceremony that is a healing ceremony. It was done in pre-contact times. The houses we'll visit here probably did it, but with furs. Here it's done, now it's done with calico cloth. We brought in Max Chikalusian Jr. Helen was part of it. A number of other people came in as elders. Chad, his brother, Chikalusian. We paid for them to come in and put this ceremony on. It consists of prayers, songs, all around the fire. I believe the two key ingredients were the river and fire, as well as the ceremony itself. We didn't advertise it, we just did it, like a lot of things. Just do it, kind of like this field trip, just do it. We didn't get official permission. We're not supposed to get official permission for this? See? Oh, here I've got the assistant director and I'm already in trouble. She's here. Well, thanks for not shutting it down. We just did it. And what I remember, a couple of things I remember, is we built a fire. The fire went straight up. Not often that happens. I mean, the flames went straight up. Usually they're wobbling around. And everybody, not everybody, but people go, oh, look at that fire. And then the ceremony went on. And the purpose of the ceremony is to create good feeling. So we, as it goes, it gets better and better. It's a cold night. It's November. It's dark. All that's important. And then afterwards, the Kenai tribe put on a very elaborate feast. We call it a feast. A lot of native foods and other things. And there's a lot of good feeling in the room. A lot of good feeling. I was told later that we may have prevented 2 suicides that night. said that I might do that. And why? Well, one reason, of course, is you have to show you care. Institutions have to show they care. So you could argue, yes or no, whether the ritual itself has impact, but at minimum, that night, we did something good. And we may do it again someday, because that's what happens in life, right? Life is not just a steady upward stream. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Life is up and down. So, I just thought I'd stop here while we're hiking out to an underground cold storage pit. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You're ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready.
Good. I'm gonna stop my machine here because you probably don't want people hiking on video. Oh, I forgot one thing. Hold on. Stop. We are going to let the bears know we're coming. Who can sing? Who was in chorus in high school?
Don't you mean choir? I was in choir for a year for senior year, but the thing is, I'm not the greatest at singing high notes, but I'm more low because I was in bass. So.
Whenever we get to the low notes, Trey will sing. Okay, who's gonna pick a song for us? Am I gonna have to assign this? Last time, I believe it was Yellow Submarine. So we can't do that one again. Oh God, Yellow Submarine, the Bears are singing. Yellow Submarine. That's a stupid song. Didn't mean anything then, doesn't mean anything now. Well, come on. Here we go. So, you notice this pit? You see this one? If you pull out your map, and you kind of look at the gray circles, there's 100 of these in this area. These are, and they spread out this way. Over here is Slycock Creek. Slotnu is the Denina name. Slotnu Cock. Little Creek mouth is down here, and we can say that's where Slycock was derived from. Not a lot of Denina place names on the peninsula, but this is one that survived. So this is a good example of what emerged at 1000 AD. They appear, whereas before that time, at least the Denina sites are relatively small and scattered. Now, all of a sudden, these village sites with houses and storage pits just explode on the landscape. From the Mulchatna River area, about 200 miles as the crow flies, to upper Copper River area in Otna territory. And we don't know where it happened first, but what was figured out was how to store salmon for winter. So they consist, there's a drawing in your little handout, but it's easier just to talk about one here. They were, as you see, dug down 4 or 5 feet, 6 feet. Some are small, some are very big. Then lined with birch bark. Not just set in, but birch bark that was sewn together. So there's a specific way to sew with spruce root. Spruce root's very handy. You pull it up and you can sew with spruce root, and that creates a waterproof barrier. Then that is lined with more moss. There's a lot of moss around here, as insulation. And then another layer of birch bark sewn. So you have waterproof layer on the inside and outside with moss in between. Essentially what a modern bunny boot is. If you've ever seen one cut open, it's got rubber layer and then felt and then another rubber layer. So a waterproof insulating layer. In that was laid fish, then a layer of grass, fish, grass, fish, grass, fish, grass, until full. Over the top, another birch bark, moss, birch bark layer, a thermal unit. This was done primarily in the fall, not July. A number have been tried, and they all involve, I shouldn't dump on the federal government, but a lot of them involved federal money. So it had to be done by a certain time, which was the wrong time for nature. So the fish rotted. You want to do it as close to freeze up in the fall as you can. So that means the last running salmon on the Kenai Peninsula, or wherever you are. And what is that fish?
The humpies.
Oh, yeah, we'll skip the humpies. Silver salmon, right? Silvers run late. Silvers run last. And silvers run up little creeks, right? Up into, and where's that little creek? Right here. So catching fish involved a number of techniques. I would guess here, very most likely it involved building a wicker dam. In other words, not a dam that dams the water, but that allows the fish to, the water to pass through, but blocks the fish. A V-shaped affair with a little trap on the back. And that's, would be built somewhere down on that creek. So in the fall, while the fish are running, you would be pitching out salmon with a very likely an assembly line process where the salmon are cleaned, although in some places they were put in the storage pit, not gutted. Cleaned, hung to dry until that critical time of year when you would be putting them in the cold storage pit. When you weren't fishing, you open a gate and the fish swim through. Very efficient way of catching salmon. Much more efficient than a rod and reel, correct me if I'm wrong. If you fish like I fish anyway. I have sacrificed a lot of lures to the Kenai River. I live on the Casilla River, so about every 4 years I get the urge to go fishing and I buy some lures and they all end up in the river. So that time of year is critical. You have to get the fish into the cold storage pit and then it all closed up before you trigger. A couple of things are a threat to this whole process, and the number one is bacteria. So if bacteria gets into the cold storage pit, there you go. That's why there are a lot of them. That's why there's 100. You don't put all your fish in one basket. so to speak. I think that's in Leviticus. Oh no, that's where it says can't live by salmon alone. We'll get to that. Leviticus. Maybe probably Ecclesiastes. Sounds more like Ecclesiastes. So that would be a problem. Other problems, obviously, a rogue bear, probably even worse, a wolverine, but those could be taken care of. The problem of bacteria or something like that would have been critical. So the whole process I'm talking about involved labor. So there was a shift toward a clan-based system that involved, some of you are taking Cook Inlet anthropology, a complicated system, but essentially it was one that provided a group to provide labor for this process. So if it's September, you can't say, I think I'll go for a trip. You owe your labor to the community, to the village, as part of this, doing one or the other of these jobs. And what do you get in return? You get food and the support of a clan-based system. Other foods that may have been put in these storage pits, what you know about today, moose, caribou. First moose apparently appear on the Kenai Peninsula about 1910 or so. They were not a traditional thing, or at least not in the abundance they are now, although that's disappearing. Caribou were the dominant ungulate, and the caribou we see today are transplanted. They were transplanted starting in the 60s. I think there were four different transplants. And that has to do with an ecological change that had to do with large fires. So that may have been put in here. Other foods, berries, other things. So an ingenious system and a very simple system. Tashlika. That always happens. Tashlika is the Dena'ina word for eagle. Where was I before I was interrupted?
Caribou.
System.
Huh?
Simple system.
Simple system, yes. Elegant and elegantly simple. So if we were to excavate any one of these, we may find bits of birch bark, and we have. Here's another one. Or other things. So, what was this, 3 years ago? The dormitories, they don't like being called dormitories, right? They like being called residence hall. Residence hall, yes. Were going to be built, and there are 4 of these underground cold storage pits in the vicinity of that construction. So in December we excavated them. I put a sign up, anybody that wants to come this weekend, and it's winter, it's snow on the ground, and excavate a cold storage pit, show up Saturday morning. I thought I was going to be the only one there. Actually it was Friday morning. But about 15 people showed up. For those of you who are in your 20s, people my age like to dump on you, right? I mean, they're always criticizing you. You're lazy, you're on your phone all the time. What else do they say about you? I don't know, blah, 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 blah. But I tell you, people came, they came dressed to work in the winter, and we excavated 2 of those pits, gathering the information that now, so now we know, and that allowed the residence halls to be built. Found pieces of birch bark. We found a piece of wood, spruce, that had a hole drilled in it. So let me kind of fast forward to probably this time of year. These would be burned to purge them of bacteria and other things. Just burn them. And this was a burned little piece of wood. I don't know what it was for. I don't know what it did, but somebody had drilled that hole. So that means we could use that for radiocarbon dating. So when you do radiocarbon dating, what you're dating is when the thing, wood, bone, whatever, when it died. You're not dating when it was used, but we're made the assumption that somebody drilled that hole about the time the tree died. Therefore, we're dating when the culture was there. That makes sense? So we set it off, and the date was, I think, 1250 AD or something like that. So all of these will date between 1000 AD and into Russian times, but they gradually disappeared in favor of above-ground caches, because you had axes to notch logs. So you won't find much in them. I find it very elegant myself. Simple, natural materials, worked really well, solved that problem, and it was cheap, right? I mean, you didn't have to pay the electric bill. No grid, no nothing, just a clan-based system. As a sidelight, last winter I tried to put a site that had a number of these on the National Register of Historic Places. That criteria involve four criteria, one of which is things with architectural significance. So they're thinking, you know, Monticello and the White House, and, maybe not the White House, yeah, the White House. Orthodox Church in Kenai is on it. Architectural significance. To me, these have architectural significance. What could be better? Simple, straightforward, and worked well. They turned it down because there are a bunch of historians. Any history majors in the audience? You? Oh. Because history majors, you know, they like big stuff. Is this being recorded?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is. Because history majors, you know, they're all about big stuff. Turn me down. I'll do it again, or somebody will. Because they had a transforming effect on the culture and are part of that sustainable culture. Sustainability is our theme here. So what that triggered is the Dena'ina moving from primarily nomadic caribou hunters, following the caribou, going to those places. So if you're nomadic, you live in tents in the north. And you can live in tents when it's 20 below. Anybody done it? I've done it. Not very long, but a couple of nights. You can live in tents if you know what you're doing. And usually they're double wall tents, so on, because you've got to be mobile. So this shifted to sedentary villages with log houses. And that's where we're going to go next. Log houses that were sedentary in the sense of they're living in one place. And why are they living here? They're living here because of that creek. And that creek and the salmon that come up that creek. That's why here. So every creek that comes into the Kenai River either has or did have a site like this. Go up the river, Funny River, Soldotna Creek, go back down river, Beaver Creek, and so on. Same on the Casila. Questions? What? No questions?
Did they use bone tools mostly for the excavation, or what do you think they had?
I don't know. I would guess birch shovels once you get through the mat. We should try it. So we should dig one. We should make one.
If you take, when we were up at Chickaloon, Kenai last summer, and we were practicing digging wells and storage pits, like how you would dig in the ground. And if you take a stick and you basically chip at the ground and then you shovel out the loose dirt. So it's not like a metal shovel where you take your foot and you cut into it and fling it. You have to do that with an implement, and if you use it's like chipping ice. It comes down to a point, you can break up the ground easy, and then you have a shovel that's just designed to scoop rather than cut and scoop. So it's actually really effective. You get 6 kids with sticks doing this.
Yeah.
It's pretty fast. And then you need a new batch of 6 kids after 15 minutes. But when you're,
Just out of curiosity, now
I could feel Trey's question.
now that I think about it, with the special techniques that they use to freeze the fish and storage them, how would they sew the spruce roots together? Do they have like a special tool that they made, or there's like a technique, or
Sewing birch bark, Helen, do you want to talk about that?
What?
Sewing birch bark?
Sewing birch bark?
Yeah, with spruce root?
Oh, you mean make baskets?
Yeah. Same technique, yeah. Want to talk about that?
sorry.
this one, that's fine. You can just hold it and talk into it.
This time of year you can't get no barks until maybe 1st of June. Then you can get bark. The roots are the same. You can't get no roots right now. It's hard to peel. So if you want to make a basket, you have to, stack some up. And then clean them and split it. Lots of work. And then you have to get a top one. You have to get a willows. So you have to put that away or somewhere that they don't dry and break. Then we go get a bark and stack it up. Or you can make it fast before they dry up. If you don't, they all shrivel up and it's hard to straighten it up because it cracks. So when the old folks make them, they make it right away so they don't break or crack, because they use it for fish. They put fish inside and bring it up when they hang it. They bring the fish up and put it in the baskets. They got a big one. So it has to be strong. So that's how the old folks use it. And I think my grandma, they used to say, long ago, they don't have no dishes, pots. And that's what they use for pots and plate, cups. That's what they use for cooking, and they used it for lots of things. They make tea and then they drink tea. So they're very special to old folks. You know, they take care of everything. They don't throw things away. They save the scraps if they're big, because long ago, you know, they had to have it that kind to put fish away. And then when they're small, they can't sew it. So they get a pitch and they put a pitch on. So they leave it for a while, then they stick together. So that's what they use. They're, I guess the old folks, you know, they get lots of things on their own, you know. They fish, they put fish away. They don't throw things away. They save fish. They save every little thing. They don't throw it away. And so, but then, so they make baskets for berries. So they're gonna pick. You have to, you know, pull the bark out, and then you bring it home. You just get the roots. You have to clean the root, clean it good, and you have to sow. So all around. Then it gets strong. So then we go pick berries and bring it home. So that's what they use. We don't run to the store or buy what we want. Here, we gotta go run the store, big bucket, run, get berries. But the old folks, they plant it before. You know, they get lots of barks, they put it away. And then if they don't do it in the winter, they bring it in, they sew it. So then they put it away. So that way they don't have to go start hurrying and stuff. Because the old folks, you know, they fish the salmon. Then the fall time they go fishing for whitefish. They move to another place and they get a whitefish. So they have to save lots of fur. Whitefish buckets. They don't use salmon's buckets. They get the new ones for every different stuff. So that's what they used to do. I think that's all.
Thank you.
Too bad.
All right. Everybody warm enough? Can we walk?
Oh, sorry.
You got it.
Here we go.
And marker.
That was a good one. Good clapping. Okay, everybody see the house?
No.
No. You are in it. So there's one corner. Step up just a bit. Back up.
I like it with the height.
Yeah. There's the other corner. Raise your hand. There's the other corner. Or back behind us.
Oh.
So this is a house on your map. I think there's 6 or 7 in this area. Its structure was log, so there would have been logs along either side, but not notch logs, because this is before axes. So 2 posts, maybe as big as my wrist, would be put in the ground, and then the logs laid between them. And these posts would be every, I don't know, 6 feet or so, maybe less, and then tied off. So you pry open, put in the next layer. Gabled roof. Back room, you're in one back there. This is probably the entrance, although hard to say. On either side would have been benches, about yay tall, with compartments underneath, enclosed compartments. So parents slept under the benches and unmarried daughters slept on the other set of benches. Unmarried men, boys slept on top of the benches with lots of furs. In the center was a hearth. The hearth was a log crib, probably, I don't know, 3-4 feet wide, about this tall. I don't know exactly how tall, but in my mind, it's hunkering height. So that you come in after a long day in weather like this, it was fine, right? But be out all day, you get a chill. So you have to, get that? Hunker by the fire. That's just, the log crib was filled with sand. So that functioned as a heat sink. The sand absorbed the heat. There was no chimney, so a smoke hole in the roof. You adjust the probably bear skin or whatever, caribou skin flap, create a draft so the smoke was up and out. And that was heat. These houses are spaced, if you look at the map, quite a ways apart. So unlike many indigenous people, or certainly today, where people live in close proximity, in this case they're spaced a ways apart, and has been proposed that that's for wood management. So you're burning wood in the fire, and you're sedentary. You're living in one spot. You're living in one spot because of the cold storage pits. So your the wood you gather, you have to go further and further if you've got somebody right next door also gathering wood. You know, community arguments. Hey, my wood. So they're spread out. I think they're about 10 acres. And I'd have to check that. That's a good project for somebody. In many places, anyone who eats with wood, you can create a sustainable wood lot in 10 acres in the north. So that's probably why the separate. If you look at the map, you will see that the furthest ones out, there's two side by side. I believe one is a ceremonial house. It doesn't have extra rooms and is similar to about 4 others, that I know of, that are about 4 others that are places where ceremonies would be held. Don't know much about them. So the roof was birch bark plates with sod on top, and that's sedentary. So how do you know it's sedentary? Because nomadic people don't build log houses. Trucking along, end of the day, 5 o'clock, let's throw up a log house. Don't do that. So we have a whole complex of things that work together, all stimulated by that invention of those cold storage pits. Probably quite a few people lived in one of these. Our culture, our modern culture, is one of the few that lives primarily inside. Even though you're good Alaskans, you still live primarily inside. Most cultures, and certainly most indigenous cultures, live outside. And you can do that if you have the right gear There's an old Swedish proverb that says there's no bad weather, only bad gear. And know how to use it. That's the second thing, knowing how to use it. And undoubtedly that phrase would have probably been in Dena'ina. So these, as well as the storage pits, these began to dot the landscape in places where there are fishing localities, primarily silver salmon fishing localities. So the creek is right down there. One other feature here is right over the bank here is a spring. So if you've done any winter camping, you know that there's two things you're concerned with at the end of the day, and one is firewood, and the second is water. It takes a lot of energy to melt snow or water. See you nodding your head, you must have some experience with that. It's really nice to have either open water or a spring. And I know for a fact that that spring is open at 20 below because I walked down there and I even took some pictures of it. So that's another feature of villages like this. Fishing area, always up on a ridge like this. The houses are never low. As the previous culture was, the riverine Kachemak culture, all the houses are down near the water. In fact, there's a site right across the river there. But here up on a ridge, why up on a ridge? I don't know. People have preferences. In Anchorage, you can probably map the how the house, as far as its the cost of the house by how far up the hillside you are, right? Rich folks don't live in Spinard. That's also an ecclesiastic. In Rio de Janeiro, it's exactly the opposite. The wealthy live down low, and poor people are high. So that's probably cultural preference as to so why up on the ridge. Although you can make some arguments for it. It's a little warmer up on the ridge, by about 5 degrees. Than the other place. So, questions on houses and house construction? Yeah.
I don't see a lot of birch trees around here. Seems like you need a lot of birch bark to make this work.
Yeah, if you don't have birch bark, you use spruce. But this is also, these are pretty small. I think there's been some kind of ecological succession here, probably a fire at some time. I've not worked that out, but you don't have to go far for birch, so I don't know.
If you think about your working radius of how far you'd go in a day, if you expand it by like 10 miles, the birch is pretty close. If you think about walking there today, for us, that's a long walk, but if you think about, well, what are you going to do?
Right.
So if you're going to spend a day going getting birch bark, you spend a day and it might take 2 hours to walk there, and then you harvest birch bark, and then you walk back, and it becomes much more accessible when you think about walking and moving around on the land in a very different way. You take the road, the current highway off, and then overlay walking paths on top of it, it changes the dynamic completely for access to which geographic features. Because if you go a mile that way, there is good birch.
Where you live, right?
Yeah. If you go to my house, it makes some very angry my family members, but you can go get birch there. As one could do. You won't be doing that. I don't do that because I like to speak with my family as well.
Yeah.
So it just opens it up a lot.
It also brings up another point that these are very fit people. Peter Kalifornsky, who I had the honor of working with on his book, told me that from Kalifornsky Village, we'll do another field trip there, by the way, he and others in the community would jog into Kenai for an evening, night on the town, jog in. Either jog the beach in the summer or snowshoe the swamps in the winter. There was no big deal, you know. It's 12 miles. Today, I don't know, when's the last time you ran 12 miles?
Last 4 years ago.
Looking around, I don't see a lot of hands up.
I could walk that.
But it would, yeah. So it's, fit people. A lot of stories about that.
Up the mountain in the dead of winter.
So I know we're getting probably past, we're not far from the college, by the way, so if you're worried about your next class and if you have to go, go. But I want to talk a little bit about what the spiritual dimensions might be. Yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks,
So here we are out alone in the wilderness, right? So to traditional Dena'ina, that would not have been a concept. You would be surrounded by entities that were aware of you. Animals were aware. Those two eagles that flew by, they knew. In traditional Dena'ina, they knew. They were checking us out. And when you look up to them, you look up with a positive. Some say even plants could be aware. So an aware, sensate wilderness. So you aren't alone, is the point. So this time of year, it seems to happen that I'm gonna pick on Anchorage people. They go a little crazy. Come down to the peninsula and they go nuts because they've been cooped up all winter, right? And now they're going to come down and, you know, big trucks, spawning sounds. Vroom, vroom, that kind of stuff. Different rules apply in wilderness to some people than in towns and cities. Not to me, but I think it's pretty obvious. I saw it last night. I was down by the Kasilof River, and I saw somebody undertaking things they certainly would never have done in town, or shouldn't have. To traditional Dena'ina, there was no wilderness. Wilderness was not a separate classification. Wilderness was home, and it was thought of as home, where you were comfortable, where you lived, because as you heard Helen's wonderful talk about what you did and you knew how to live off the land. I heard a great story of her father, Pete Bobby, and I heard this from, I can't remember who told it, but they were out a long ways from Lime Village, and Lime is a very isolated place by our standard, right? But not by, and his snow machine had broke down, and they came across Pete, and you talk and chat and say, well, Pete, hop on, we'll give you a ride into Lime. And he says, why? He was home. He could tinker with his machine. He could shoot some spruce hens. He had a gun, or whatever he had, I don't know. He could live out there for a long time. Why would he leave his stuff out there? Why? Now to us, we'd say, oh yeah, okay, thanks, yeah, that's great. Because our comfort zone is in the civilized world. But the comfort zone, I think it's accurate to say, of traditional people, including Dena'ina, was in this world. So there were many dimensions to this wild world that we call wild. And that included, could include animals, of course, and animals were thought to have a spirit, a willful spirit. There were other spirits that were around in the traditional way. Some of this has changed with Christianity, but maybe not. Some were, I don't know, kind of benign, let's say. There was a least weasel spirit. The weasel spirit was one that would come in at night and twirl your hair. So when you woke up in the morning, you'd have a bad hair day. I have one in my house that takes one sock. I have a drawer full of one sock, and that little rascal has the other socks because he thinks it's funny. Some were ominous. So there were a number of ominous spirits who, from an anthropology standpoint, reflect what people fear. So the question to me is not do or don't they exist. The question is how does it reflect what people fear. And even though these are folks who could walk all day, every day, occasionally things happen. So getting lost is one of those. Getting lost or getting hurt so you can't make it back. That would be something you would fear. And then there were positive spirits. One is Untitled. So when you hunted an animal, you always, in the traditional way, you burned the bones of that land animal in the fire. Or if they were a fish, you would put them back in the water. And that, according to Peter Kalifornsky, as he told it to me, sent the animal back to become an animal again. So it's a humble ceremony, but you, and he would call it, and he would point to the west, which was presided over by Untitled, the mother of everything over and over, Mother Earth in that sense. And there they would, it was said, put their clothes on again, become animals again, and come back to the human land. So, okay, come back to the human land. So if you think about it, that's ecology, right? Ecology in ritual form. If the land is treated correctly, not with hostility, not with arrogance, and with forethought, then nature replicates itself, put in ritual form. And that's a major, in my mind, aspect of sustainability. Because it has to be, nature has to be sustainable for us to be sustainable. So when the day comes when we elevate that concept to ritual, then we'll be in good shape. We are way over. Some of you have a class to meet in 2 minutes. So you may have a class to teach in 2 minutes. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. So the way out is head to that road and walk the road in, and you're about 5 minutes from the college. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Helen. Great story.